stuff goes amazing with the homemade yogurt. Check out the consistency of that. Yum. The raspberries are really plentiful in the garden, so we're picking a whole bunch of those today. And then we're going to head into the kitchen and turn all of these beautiful raspberries into a raspberry chocolate sundae topper. It's Rachel here from Bush Edge Homesteading Australia, and this year we have an absolute abundance of raspberries because hubby actually re-established a new raspberry patch for us, and that was, I think it was about 2 years ago now. So this is kind of the first year where we're starting to get those second year canes producing lots and lots of raspberries. So today my youngest and I have been very busy picking, and we've got lots of raspberries, haven't we?
Oh yeah, like look at how big it is.
Yep, Cooper agrees as well. Now it's coming up to Christmas time, and that means it's also the time of the year where not only do we have lots and lots of yummy raspberries in here, and I better keep picking because I want to get as many as we can today. Not only do we have lots of raspberries, but it's also kind of that time of the year where we want to start thinking about some gifts, and chocolate raspberry sundae topper is always a gift that people seem to love. The raspberry topper is a really decadent ball book recipe, and I'll show you where we will get that in a second when we head back in the kitchen. And it's absolutely delicious for using on top of ice cream, on top of yogurt, but it also does kind of set up a bit like a jam, and that's because the raspberries do actually naturally have a fair bit of pectin in them. So let's get inside, I'll show you the recipe, and yeah, we'll crack on with making some. Ready? Do you want to wash them up, buddy?
Yep.
Awesome. Then when you're done with that, we'll let them drain, all right?
Yep.
I've moved back to the kitchen and got all the bits and bobs together that we need for making our chocolate raspberry sundae topper. And I've also got the recipe that we're going to be using today. So this one here is out of the Ball Book, Complete Book of Home Preserving. And they also have a copy of it online as well. And this is the one that we're going to do today, the chocolate raspberry sundae topper. Now, ingredients wise, it says we need cocoa powder, and I've got 2 different ones here today. I'm kind of trying to decide which one I want to go with. With your cocoa powders, there can be a lot of difference. Like if you look at this one here, you can kind of see this is kind of a light, more milky kind of chocolate. This one here is a lot darker. It's a lot richer. You can probably see the colour in there. Actually thinking we'll go with this one today, so I will pop that one aside. And the next thing we need is our pectin, it says. Now, when it comes to pectin, I don't use that when I make this recipe. I don't think it needs it. And that's because the raspberries already have a decent amount of pectin to them, particularly if you pick a few that are not as ripe as the others. The less ripe ones have more pectin to them, and it'll set up better if you have more of those berries that are a little bit underripe. So I've got a few of those in there to kind of add the pectin to it. As I said, I've never had an issue really with it setting up without it. If you want to add pectin, obviously you can add it. The recipe kind of has an amount there if you did want to, but we're not going to do that today. One of the other things with this is sometimes you actually want it to be a little bit looser. If you want it to be more like a spoonable or pourable type sauce, you don't really want it setting up that much. So you don't want kind of that pectin in there, making it really kind of firm up like a nice firm jam. The next thing is obviously our raspberries. And as you saw, we were out in the garden, so you're not going to get fresher than these ones today. Some lemon juice, and because we want to preserve this for the shelf, I've got some bottled lemon juice, and we've also got some sugar. I'm a little bit heartbroken today because I've had to run to the shops to actually buy some sugar because I've run out of my honest to goodness big bucket of sugar, and I need to do another honest to goodness order. I absolutely love that sugar. The flavour that imparts is really, really yummy because there's a bit of a rawness to it. This will still be good, but yeah, I'm definitely missing my big bucket of sugar for preserving purposes. Now, I do want to make this jam for gifts. So I went to the shops today and I got some new jars. I haven't actually opened these up yet to have a bit of a closer look at them. These are just some jars from, I think it was Kmart I picked these up. They say preserving jars. I definitely wouldn't use these for preserving in the pressure canner, but I think these will be perfectly fine today in our steam canner. And I am planning on steam canning these so that they will be nice and shelf stable. That's actually quite a nice, fairly thick jar, so I'm pretty happy with that. One piece lids they've come with. Feels like there's a fairly reasonable seal on that. So yeah, that should do the job nicely. And I think they're a nice little size to kind of gift. My plan is to actually do 4 little jars and then pop those in one of these cute little Christmas reusable bags, and basically make 2 gifts up today. I work with 2 absolutely beautiful ladies at work as part of my team, and it's always nice to be able to give someone something from the heart, and yeah, this is going to come from, well, both the heart and the garden. Obviously, before I can use these new jars, I need to give these a bit of a wash, so let's go do that. Now they're all washed up, I'm just going to put some hot water from the tap into these jars. And that's because I will be putting a hot jam into the jars. I don't want to put hot jam into cold jars and potentially break them. I think I've showed you guys this trick before, but yeah, some people have different ways of heating up their jars, but this is kind of what I like to do because it's just really quick and easy, to be honest. Probably noticed a theme with a lot of the stuff that I do, that often it's about finding something that allows me to do these things that I like doing, but finding a fairly quick way of being able to do it as well to fit it into our busy lives. And there they all are, filled with water. And I'll just leave them to sit there and that'll keep those warm. While I was in there cleaning those, I was kind of heating up the steam canner as well because, again, hot jars, hot food needs to go into a hot canner so that you don't have glass breakage. So I did want that to be nice and warm, but that's well and truly heated up now, so I'm going to turn that off. That'll still stay nice and warm, and it means that I can have that nice and ready to go for when I have my jam ready and then to go into here. Now, I am using the steam canner today, and that's because, as you probably noticed, that's going to be a fairly small batch of jars. They are a high acid recipe, so that means that I can either water bath can that or I can steam can that. And the steam canner is by far quicker and easier, so that's why I'm using the steam canner today. If you haven't used a steam canner before and you want to know more about kind of how these work, beyond what I'll share with you in this video, yeah, if you want that detail, there is a bit of a step-by-step on my Canning Basics series, which is on this Bush Edge Homesteading YouTube channel. So check that out if you want to know a bit more about steam canning. Now, I am going to go a little bit off script from the recipe because we're not using the pectin. So the first thing for us that we're going to do is add in the 4.5 cups of our raspberries. So they're going to go straight into our pot. And it does say to have those crushed, so I did kind of squish them down quite a bit in this measuring jug. And the other thing that I need to go in here now is our lemon juice. So 4.5 cups of red raspberries, they say to add 4 tablespoons of our lemon juice. Let's just measure that in. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so I'm going to get these things off my stovetop now because I definitely don't want to burn my book. And it's time, firstly, to heat this right up. So what I need to do is bring this up to a bit of heat. Doesn't have to be boiling. And then what we're going to do is chuck in our sugar. Now, normally when I make jams and stuff, I do kind of just chuck the fruit and the sugar together at the start and it kind of macerates. And essentially you're doing a really similar thing here to making a raspberry jam, to be honest. So I don't think it'd actually hurt if you put the sugar in at the same time, but I'm going to let that heat up a little bit and then I will put all of that sugar in. When it comes to the sugar, it is a lot of sugar. So 6 3/4 cups. This is definitely not a recipe if you are a diabetic trying to keep your sugar down, but it is absolutely delicious as a bit of an indulgent recipe. So that's why I needed to buy more sugar today. Now, I'm not sure how many cups we actually get out of a 2 kilos, so we're about to find out. And I know it's not very clear on here, but this little mark at this point here, that's 5 cups. So I'm still just a little bit under. So that's our first 5. So I'm going to pop that in our pot. And then I'll come back to you and add in another 1 3/4 that was, wasn't it? Alright, getting closer. There we go. We'll pop that in the pot as well. There we go. Now you can probably hear that starting to boil under all that sugar. I'm gonna try and scrape as much of this sugar and raspberry juice out of this container as I can. That's all good stuff. Don't want to waste those ingredients. There we go. And then at this point, I'm just going to start getting tongue-tied. I'm just going to start mixing all of that through. Look at that. Beautiful colour. That's the colour we normally have when we do the straight up raspberry jam. Although I think from memory, there's not quite as much sugar to raspberries in the ratio when we do the raspberry jam. This is definitely a bit sweeter, which is actually why we quite like using this on top of things like yogurt, because when I make yogurt, I don't add any sugar or any flavours of any kind. So all of the sweetness actually comes from whatever topping we put on top. So this definitely adds a bit of sugar for a bit of sweetness. Now, while that's coming back up to the boil, I'm going to bring you over here and we're going to grab some of this beautiful cocoa. And just checking the recipe again, we need a 1/2 cup of cocoa powder. Now it talks about sifting it. I don't bother sifting. Again, you know, it's often about doing things quick and easy in the kitchen, and I've never found it to be an issue to not sift it. So let's open that one up. How beautiful and dark does that look? And no, I'm not going to pull that open because I've been caught out by that before and it goes everywhere. I'm just going to grab some scissors and then we'll snip the corner off that. And then we can pour in a 1/2 cup in this little measure here. Now this is what's going to give it that really delicious, rich, chocolatey flavour. I want to make sure I've got a good 1/2 cup there. Making a mess everywhere as always. And let's get that in our pot too. Ooh, look at that colour starting to change.
Through the snow on a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on Baptist ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight.
Check out how much the colour on that's changed. It's now got that really dark chocolatey raspberry sort of look about it, and it smells absolutely gorgeous as well. Like I've really got that chocolate aroma in the air as well as the berry sort of smell. I think that's going to be beautiful with that darker cocoa powder this year. Oh my goodness, that smells good. All right, what I need to do now is just let this keep coming up to the boil. And then once it gets to the boiling point, I do want to keep it boiling a bit. That's now boiling away, which is what I need it to do. Now, I am keeping a fairly good eye on this because I don't want it to scald. I also don't want it to burn the raspberry, and I also don't want it to kind of like burn that chocolatey sort of flavour as well. So there is a little bit of a balance that I'm watching for. You can kind of see when the bubbles kind of change the way they look a bit. And it's quite hard to describe, but the viscosity of it changes a little bit. It does look a little bit kind of, I don't know, shinier. Now, I will say this is a recipe where if you kind of have it a little bit under, it's really not the end of the world. It just becomes a pourable sundae topper as opposed to a kind of spoonable, spreadable one that you can use easily on toast and stuff as well. I do think I need to kind of test my canning gear with these new jars because I haven't actually used these ones specifically before. Let me pour out some of the water in this one, and that is still feeling nice and warm, which is exactly what I want to happen. But normally I use one of these kind of canning funnels to get my jam in. And as I suspected, that's actually not going to fit. So I'm going to need a little bit more precision today to get all my jam in these little jars. I might as well pop that away. So I've switched that off. I'm just going to give it a moment just for the kind of boiling to settle down. It's obviously going to be super duper hot to work with, and I do just want to let it settle a little bit before I try and get it into those little jars. The jam's all settled down. I've been thinking about how to get the jam easily into these tiny little jars. And I'm actually thinking one of my kind of measuring scoops might be the way to go. So this is a bit of a test. We'll see how we go. Hopefully I don't get it everywhere. Oh, it's going to go everywhere, isn't it? All right, plan B. Let's try a little measuring jug. All right, so what I might do is use the scoop to try and get our jam in the jug so we don't get it all over the outside of the jug. And then we'll get it in the jars. Now, you might have noticed I didn't sterilize these jars, and that's because this recipe has greater than 10 minutes steam canning time. That means I don't need to sterilize any of these little jars. That's not working too bad. Now, one thing I probably do need to do is check the recipe just to see what type of headspace I need on these. So I'm obviously getting slightly different heights on each one of these at the moment. Now, from memory, it usually can go pretty close to the top, but I do just want to check that. Alrighty, so it is a 1/4 inch or 0.5 centimetre headspace on these ones that we need to leave. So if you've got one of these little tools, the 1/2 centimetre kind of 1/4 inch mark is the bottom one. So if we go to this one here, that's about the height between the top of your sundae topper and the top of the jar that you're looking for. You know, if we look at this one over here, that's way too low and I need to top that one up. Now, you probably noticed I overfilled a couple of these. Not the end of the world if you do that. Just grab a spoon, take a little bit out, and just make sure you've got that headspace right, because that's what will help your jars to seal properly. And it also means you don't end up with any of the food kind of expanding and basically pushing out of your lids, which can stop you from getting a good seal and also makes you kind of canner all icky with whatever food you're trying to can. Now, next, what we want to do is just give these rims a bit of a wipe, because as you probably saw, ooh, that's a bit warm. I have actually spilt a little bit, and anything that's kind of spilt can also affect your seals. So I just want to make sure that I've given them a nice clean. Now, what I tend to do is if I'm using paper towel like I am here, I like just to wet it a little bit, just to make sure I've got all that kind of food residue off. I'm going to do that with all of them. And then once we've got these all nicely cleaned up, we can start to put the lids on. Oh, that one there had a little bit on. All right, they feel and look a lot better. So next it's just about kind of capping these off. And then once all these lids are on, these are going to be ready to go in our steam canner. Now with our lids, you do always want to make sure that they are finger tight, so you want them to be tight. And yes, this is very, very hot at the moment. So helps if you've got cast iron fingers. Yeah, as we're saying, make sure they're finger tight, but don't over tighten them. If you do, you can't get that last bit of air kind of pushing out. That will then kind of cool down and create that suction and vacuum towards the end, which is what kind of seals your jars. Ooh, last one. And the fingers are definitely burning now because these are hot. Now you probably notice I've got these on an oven tray, and no, that's not because I'm going to try and can these in the oven. It's just purely so I can carry this all outside to pop these in the steam canner. So let's go do that now. Alrighty, let's load up the steam canner. And this time I'm going to use these because my fingers are hot, hot, hot at the moment. Now, as I showed you before, I have heated up the canner. These jars are still very warm. And once I've got these in, I'll turn this on again. And then what we're going to need to do is bring this back up to temperature. With the steam canners, there's a little dial in the top, and I'll show you that in a second. We actually don't start our processing time until that dial is in the green zone. In fact, here's our lid. You can kind of see on here the different zones. You can see at different altitudes to get to the green zone. It's actually going to take a bit of different time. For me, I'm in the lowest altitude, the zone 1, even though we're in the ranges. So once this little dial here gets up to the green zone, that's when I'm going to start my processing time. And for this recipe here, it's a 10-minute processing time, but I'm not going to start at the moment. I turn this on. We've got to wait till that dial gets into the zone. So let's get this back up to the temp. Now, it's absolutely lovely to have a bunch of this to gift, but it's also nice to have some in the fridge for us as well. But I don't need to preserve that up to be shelf stable today. We will be picking lots more raspberries, as you could probably tell from when we were outside earlier. So all I'm going to do is take what's left, pop it in one of our jars. We make a mess everywhere. Actually, it looks like we might get more than one jar. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to cap that off with one of our regular kind of ball twist top caps. These are not kind of canning ones for being shelf stable, but these are amazing for being able to put jams straight into the fridge without wasting any of your valuable canning lids. So let me clean that up and I'll pop this one on too. Cool thing about having ones like this means that you can actually give it a bit of a taste test as well. It's always good to know that you've actually gifted a nice quality product. And of course, every batch does end up a little bit different. Might just be that your berries are of a different ripeness. You know, you might have cooked it for a different amount of time, or in the case of what we've done today, I've used a different cocoa to what I normally do. So yeah, so it'd be nice to test that out. Right, I am going to get another jar to put the rest of this in, and then we better get outside and actually see if we've hit the green zone on our steam canner. I can't help myself. How good does that look? Oh my goodness. That is so good. All right, I'm going to wash my hands and I'm going to run outside and see if we're in that green zone on the canner. Oh yeah, that's well and truly boiling. That doesn't necessarily mean it's time to start the timer though, so let's just jump up here and have a bit of a look. Alright, so you can see here, even though that is really steaming, we are not yet at the point that that little dial is in the green zone for my zone 1. So I actually need that to keep going a little bit longer. before I start that timer. Let's have another look. There we go. Now we are well and truly in that green zone, and that means I can start the timer. And for this recipe, it's a 10-minute processing time. Just keep in mind, if you're doing any steam canning, different recipes will have different processing times to kind of penetrate the heat properly and get your food up to temp and to hold it there for the right amount of time. But for this one, 10 minutes. Remember, if you don't do steam canning, that you can do this in your water bath canner as well, and it'll be the same 10-minute processing time. That's 10 minutes processing time. So what I need to do now is just switch this off and just leave it for the next 5 minutes. So I'll set my timer again for 5 minutes, and then I'll come back. It is important to leave your lid on at this point for 5 minutes, because that 5 minutes is part of the processing time. So we'll open it up in 5 and see what it looks like together. Our 5-minute cool down time's passed, and I'm gonna open it up. As always, kind of facing it away from me, because even though it has gone through that cool down, as you can probably just see, there's still plenty of steam that would have come up in my face if I had that the wrong way around. And there's our little jars of our Sundae topper. And don't they look really cute? I'm not going to touch those. Again, I just need to have a little bit of patience, and I'm going to leave these now for the next 24 hours. And it's actually okay for me just to leave this out here. Nothing's going to disturb them. In fact, they're probably safer out here than putting them in the kitchen, where the kids and hubby and myself are likely to kind of bump them about. At this stage, you really do just want to leave them so that they can cool right down and those seals can set up properly as well. Yeah, so there is our chocolate raspberry sundae topper. I'll put a little clip right at the end of packaging them up into the nice little Chrissy gifts. And yeah, hopefully you find this a good recipe. It is absolutely incredibly delicious. Definitely one that I highly recommend. As I said, people love getting this for gifts as well. So the perfect one with Christmas coming up. As always, guys, thanks a bunch for joining, and catch you later.